Stop, Dad, the handkerchief is poisoned. The words sliced through the summer air like lightning. Every head in the garden turned. The orchestra froze mid-note, the violin bow hanging in silence. White petals drifted from the archway, landing softly on marble steps that now felt like a stage of judgment. At the end of the aisle stood a man in a tailored navy suit. His name was Elliot Granger, a tycoon whose name built skyscrapers and silenced rooms. His hand, steady a moment ago, now trembled. Across from him, the bride clutched her bouquet and the delicate white handkerchief that had been wrapped around it. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The voice that shattered the moment belonged to a little girl, no taller than Elliot's chest, standing near the last row of chairs. Her skin glowed under the afternoon light, her small hand still raised, finger pointing straight toward the handkerchief. Her brown eyes, wide but fearless, locked on the woman at the altar. "Sweetheart," Elliot said, his voice barely holding together, "what are you talking about?" The child's chest rose and fell, her breath quick, but she did not lower her arm. "She touched it last night," she said. "It burned her hand. I saw her through the glass." Gasps rippled through the guests. A bridesmaid dropped her clutch. The officiant took a step back. Only the sound of wind moved through the tall oaks surrounding the ceremony. The bride forced a soft laugh, trembling at the edges. "She is confused," she said. "She has been through so much. I understand." Her voice wavered, but she lifted the handkerchief higher, as if daring anyone to question her. The little girl's voice cracked again, louder now. "Please, Dad, do not touch it. Please." The word "Dad" fell like a stone into still water. The guests looked from the man to the girl, realization dawning in whispers. Elliot's expression shifted shock, then disbelief, then something deeper, older, a memory stirring beneath layers of denial. "Who told you that?" he asked, his tone caught between anger and fear. The girl swallowed. "Mom did, before she got sick." The air grew heavy. The bride's hand tightened around the handkerchief, her knuckles pale against the lace. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, the handkerchief slipped from her fingers and fell, slow as snowfall, landing on the white carpet. Elliot stared at it. The little girl's whisper echoed in his mind, quieter now, almost tender. "Please, Dad, do not let her hurt you." He looked up. The bride's smile was gone. The orchestra stood frozen, bows still in hand. The only sound left was the rustle of the trees and the quiet heartbeat of truth beginning to rise. The silence after the fall of the handkerchief felt longer than any prayer. Guests stood frozen, unsure whether to breathe or speak. The white cloth rested on the aisle like a fallen flag. Elliot Granger did not move. His eyes were fixed on it as if the truth itself lay folded inside. Then, movement. The bride, Isadora, forced a tremble into a laugh. "Everyone, please," she said softly, her tone delicate but urgent. "It is just a misunderstanding. She is a child. She has been through a lot since her mother passed." Her words slid through the quiet like perfume. Practiced and smooth, Elliot turned slowly toward the little girl. She stood at the end of the aisle, small shoulders squared, still pointing at the fallen handkerchief. Her voice had stopped trembling, but her eyes glistened with something fierce. She did not blink. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to recover dignity. "Shall we continue the ceremony?" he asked, forcing a smile. No one answered. Elliot's sister, Clara, leaned forward from the front row. Her diamond earrings caught the sundae. "Elliot, darling," she said through a tight smile, "please let us take her outside. The poor thing must be overwhelmed." The little girl shook her head hard. "I am not lying," she said. Her tone was steady, far too calm for her age. She put something on it. "I saw it on the counter last night. It burned her hand." Gasps rippled again. Someone whispered, "Burned." Another voice muttered, "Is this a joke?" Isadora pressed a hand to her chest. "Sweetheart, I do not know what you think you saw," she said, her face pale but her voice still sugar-coated. "You have been confused before. You told your nanny the same wild story about medicine last month." The little girl frowned. That was true too. Elliot stepped forward at last. His shadow fell over the handkerchief. The air seemed to bend around him. "Anna," he said, his voice low. Come here. The girl hesitated, then walked down the aisle. Every step was heavy, the sound of her shoes echoing against the marble. When she reached him, she looked up. Please do not touch it, Dad, she whispered again. It smells like the stuff from the garage, the one that makes the rats die. Elliot's jaw clenched. Who told you about that? No one. I smelled it when she opened the drawer. The crowd stirred. A man in the third row coughed to break the tension, but even that sound died quickly. Clara stood, her voice sharp. This is absurd. Elliot, you cannot possibly entertain this madness. Look at her. She is frightened. You are frightening her more by listening. But it was not fear that flickered across the girl's face. It was determination. She glanced at her small purse, then reached inside. From the tiny pocket, she pulled out something metallic and square. I have proof, she said. A murmur spread like wind through the guests. Isadora's hand tightened around her bouquet until the stem snapped. Elliot crouched slightly. What is that? It is a video, Anna said. Marcus helped me. He put the camera on the shelf because I told him she was acting strange. It shows her touching your handkerchief with the bottle. Isadora's breath hitched. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You are really letting a 7-year-old dictate your wedding? She is 8, Elliot said quietly. The correction hung in the air like a verdict. He gestured to his assistant, who had been hovering near the back. Bring me a tablet, Elliot ordered. The assistant hesitated, glancing nervously at Isadora, then obeyed. When the tablet arrived, Elliot held out his hand. Anna placed the small drive in his palm. Her fingers were trembling now, but she stood tall. Isadora stepped forward. Elliot, please. You are humiliating me in front of everyone. Do you not see what she is doing? She wants to ruin this day. She is jealous. She misses her mother, and she cannot handle you being happy again. Elliot did not respond. His eyes stayed on the device as the video loaded. The sound of digital static filled the hush. On the screen, the image appeared grainy, but clear enough. A woman in a white robe stood by the vanity in a softly lit room. Her face was turned slightly away from the camera, but everyone recognized her. Isadora. In her hand, she held a small bottle. She dipped a piece of fabric into the liquid, flinching as it touched her skin. She wrapped it around something white, a handkerchief, and placed it in a jewelry box. The crowd gasped. Isadora's mouth opened, then shut. That is not. It burned her hand, Anna whispered, finishing the sentence. Elliot's chest rose slowly. His face turned pale under the midday Sunday. He looked down at the fallen handkerchief once more. Do not touch it, Anna repeated, her voice breaking for the first time. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the birds in the trees seemed to hold still. Then Elliot straightened, looking directly at the officiant. The ceremony is over, he said quietly. The officiant blinked, uncertain if he had heard correctly. Elliot turned to his guests. Thank you for coming. Please leave the grounds immediately. Voices broke out confused, murmuring, disbelieving, but none dared defy him. One by one, guests began to scatter down the garden path, leaving petals and silence behind. When the last of them had gone, Elliot finally turned to Anna. He knelt to her level, his voice low and hoarse. You did the right thing, he said. The little girl nodded, tears finally breaking free. I just did not want you to get hurt. Behind them, the bride's bouquet dropped to the ground. The roses scattered, pale and trembling. The handkerchief lay beside them, a small white ghost on the floor of what should have been a perfect day. The guests had left. The white chairs stood empty beneath the garden canopy, their ribbons fluttering in the warm afternoon wind. The celebration that was meant to echo with music and laughter now carried only the faint hum of insects and the low murmur of disbelief. The air still smelled of roses and champagne, but underneath was something sharper, like metal and fear. Elliot Granger stood at the center of the aisle, motionless. His polished shoes were dusted with fallen petals. The handkerchief still lay where it had dropped, untouched, a small white island between him and the truth he could no longer deny. Anna stood a few steps behind him, clutching her small purse close to her chest. Her cheeks were streaked with drying tears, but her eyes stayed fixed on the cloth. The courage that had carried her through the chaos now trembled at the edges. Isadora had not left. She stood at the far end of the garden, her once perfect posture unraveling. The wind tugged at her veil, the silk twisting around her arm. Her face, once calm and radiant, now showed cracks of panic. She looked from Elliot to the handkerchief, then back again, as if still searching for a way to rewrite what everyone had seen. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking. "Elliot, you cannot believe this. That video, it was fake. Someone wants to ruin us. That girl has been obsessed ever since she learned about her mother's death. She is confused. She needs help." Elliot did not look at her. His gaze stayed on the cloth, his expression unreadable. "The video showed your ring," he said quietly. "The same one you are wearing right now." Isadora froze. Her hand instinctively moved to cover the ring. The diamond caught the light for a moment, then disappeared beneath her trembling fingers. "Elliot, please," she whispered. "You do not understand. I love you. I would never hurt you." Anna took a hesitant step forward. Her small voice broke the silence. "You were in the kitchen last night," she said softly. "You told Marcus not to tell anyone. He got scared." "Ugh." Isadora turned toward her, eyes narrowing. "You think you can destroy me, little girl? You do not even know what you saw." Elliot finally moved. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pair of thin, disposable gloves from his pocket. The crowd had left, but the eyes of memory still seemed to linger. Slowly, he slipped the gloves on, the latex snapping faintly in the heavy air. "Elliot," Isadora pleaded, "please stop this." He ignored her. He knelt and picked up the handkerchief by one corner. The fabric, once white and elegant, now carried faint yellow stains where it had touched the ground. The scent that rose from it was subtle, but unmistakable, a sharp chemical tang that did not belong to any perfume. He held it at arm's length. "Anna," he said, his voice calm but low, "step back." The girl obeyed instantly, moving behind him. Isadora's breathing quickened. "Elliot, it was just cleaning fluid," she said, desperation creeping in. "I was removing a stain. You have to believe me." Elliot's eyes met hers, steady and cold. "Then why did it burn you?" For a heartbeat, she had no answer. Her lips parted, then closed again. Anna pointed toward the bouquet that had fallen beside the altar. "She dropped the bottle in there," she whispered. "Before the ceremony." Elliot walked toward it. The petals had darkened where the liquid had spilled. He lifted the bouquet carefully, scanning the ground. Among the stems and ribbon, a small glass vial glimmered under the sunlight. He picked it up with gloved fingers. The label was half peeled away, but two words remained visible: toxic compound. The world seemed to tilt. For a long moment, Elliot said nothing. Then he turned toward Isadora, his expression no longer confused or pained, but resolved. "Call security," he told his assistant, who had returned from the house after hearing the raised voices. "Do not let anyone leave the property." Isadora's composure finally shattered. "You are humiliating me over a child's fantasy," she cried, her voice rising. "Do you think anyone will believe this? They will say she planted it, that you lost your mind." Elliot's tone was quiet, almost gentle. "Then let them investigate. I am done living in stories that someone else writes for me." He turned to Anna again. "You said Marcus helped you record that video?" She nodded. "He said it was wrong to spy, but I told him you would not believe me without it." Elliot placed a gloved hand on her shoulder. "You were brave," he said. "You should never have had to prove the truth by yourself." Isadora backed away, her shoes scraping against the marble path. "You will regret this," she hissed. "You are throwing away everything we built." Elliot straightened. "We built nothing," he said. "You built a lie, and a little girl tore it down with the truth." The last word hung in the air like thunder. Anna's breath hitched, the weight of what had happened settling in. She looked at her father, uncertain if he was angry or broken. But when he turned to her again, his face softened. "Go inside, Anna," he said gently. "Stay with Clara until I come for you." She hesitated. "Are you mad at me?" He shook his head. "No, I am proud." As she walked toward the house, the veil from Isadora's gown fluttered loose and drifted to the ground. The garden, once a place of vows, now felt like a courtroom where innocence had spoken louder than wealth or pride. When the front doors closed behind Anna, Elliot looked once more at the small vial in his hand. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying away the last note of music that had tried to celebrate a wedding. Now, only truth remained, quiet and undeniable. The sun was lowering behind the Granger estate when the last of the police cars rolled away. Blue and red lights flickered against the grand white columns, washing the mansion in color that felt more like accusation than safety. The garden had been taped off for evidence. The handkerchief, the vial, and the wilted bouquet were gone, sealed in plastic. The laughter that had once echoed between those trees would not return for a long time. Inside the house, the silence felt even heavier. The chandeliers glowed softly, casting warm light on walls lined with portraits, paintings of power, legacy, and pride. Elliot Granger stood near the piano in the sitting room, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. The day had aged him in hours. Anna sat on the edge of the sofa across from him, legs swinging just above the floor. Her small purse rested beside her, the zipper half open. Her dress, once chosen to look presentable for the wedding, now hung awkwardly, streaked with dust from the garden. Her braids had come loose. She looked both tired and alert, the kind of stillness that comes from holding in too much for too long. Clara Granger entered quietly, setting a tray on the table between them. "Hot chocolate," she said softly, "and chamomile tea for you, Elliot." Anna murmured a thank you. She stared into the cup, watching the steam curl like ghosts. Elliot finally spoke, his voice measured. "You should not have had to see any of that today." Anna looked up. "I could not let her hurt you," she said. "I promised Mom I would not." Clara's hand froze halfway to her own cup. "What did you say?" Anna turned slightly, her eyes shifting between them. "Mom told me once," she said carefully, "that if I ever saw something that felt wrong, I had to say it, even if no one listened. She said the truth is like air. You can cover it, but people still need it to breathe." Elliot exhaled, the words cutting deep. For years, he had avoided talking about her mother. He had buried that grief beneath schedules, meetings, and polite smiles. But hearing the little girl repeat her mother's advice pulled him back to a life he had not faced. "Your mother was brave," he said quietly. Anna nodded. She was scared sometimes too, but she said courage is not being unafraid. It is doing the right thing anyway. The room went still. Outside, the wind brushed the glass of the tall windows. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Clara leaned forward, her voice careful. "Elliot, what will happen to Isidora?" "She will be questioned," he said. "There is enough evidence to investigate. I have already spoken to the authorities." "And the press?" Clara asked. "They will find out," he replied. "They always do." Anna looked down at her cup again. "Will they say I did something wrong?" Elliot crouched so he was eye level with her. "No," he said firmly. "You told the truth. That is never wrong." Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time since the ceremony, he saw the little girl behind the courage. She was still a child who wanted safety, not attention. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but the words felt too thin to carry the promise. A soft knock came from the doorway. Marcus, the young groundskeeper, stood there holding his hat in his hands. "Sir," he said, "the police said they are done outside. They will send a report tomorrow." Elliot nodded. "Thank you, Marcus. And thank you for helping her." Marcus looked at Anna with quiet admiration. "She helped herself, sir. I just handed her the camera." When he left, Clara sat back, her gaze moving between father and daughter. "Elliot," she said, "you need to rest. You both do. I will have the guest room made ready for her." Anna's brow furrowed. "Am I staying here?" Elliot hesitated. The house was large, spotless, and full of things that did not matter, but he could not imagine her sleeping anywhere else that night. "Yes," he said softly. "You are staying here." Her shoulders eased. "Then can I keep the light on?" "Of course," he said. Later, when the house had quieted, Elliot stood at the doorway of the guest room. The lamp cast a warm glow across the bed, where Anna lay curled under a blanket too big for her. Her small purse sat on the nightstand. Through the open window, the sound of crickets filled the air. He watched her for a while, remembering the way she had stood in that garden, facing down lies that even adults had been too afraid to question. She had been the only one to raise her voice when the truth was in danger. Clara appeared behind him, speaking in a low whisper. She reminds me of her mother. Elliot nodded, his throat tight. She is stronger than either of us ever were. When he finally walked away, he passed the grand staircase, the portraits, the untouched wedding decorations stacked by the door. Everything about his world felt different now, shaken, exposed, but lighter somehow. In the kitchen, a faint chemical smell still lingered. He opened the window wider, letting the night air in. The stars were sharp above the trees, unbothered by the chaos below. Upstairs, Anna stirred in her sleep. Her small hand reached toward the empty side of the bed, then rested again. Elliot stood in the hallway and whispered to the quiet house, as if she could hear him through the walls. "You did save me." The clock in the foyer chimed once, marking the first hour of a long night. But for the first time in years, the truth had a place to live inside that house, steady and unashamed. The next morning arrived pale and quiet. A thin veil of fog hung over the Granger estate, softening the sharp lines of marble and glass. The garden where everything had fallen apart looked almost peaceful again, except for the faint yellow tape that still clung to the iron gate. Dew glittered on the petals that had survived the night. From inside the house, the world seemed muted, as if holding its breath before beginning again. Elliot Granger stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee that had gone lukewarm before he even tasted it. He wore the same suit from yesterday, jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his forearms. Sleep had not visited him. The morning light through the windows turned the silver in his hair brighter, almost fragile. Behind him came a soft sound of footsteps. Anna entered the kitchen, her braids slightly undone, her small hands rubbing sleep from her eyes. She still wore the oversized t-shirt Clara had given her the night before. The hem brushed her knees. "Good morning," she said in a small voice. Elliot turned, surprised by how steady she sounded. "Good morning, Anna. Did you sleep at all?" She nodded. "A little. The light stayed on. That helped." He smiled faintly. "Good. You can keep it on as long as you like." She climbed onto one of the tall chairs by the counter. Her legs swung just above the floor, rhythmically, like a clock marking time. She looked around the massive kitchen-polished countertops, chrome appliances, glass jars lined in perfect rows. It looked more like a showroom than a place where people ate. "Do you ever cook?" she asked. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Not really. The chef usually handles that." Anna traced her finger along the edge of her cup of milk. "Mom used to say people who do not cook forget what warmth tastes like." The sentence caught him off guard. He set down his coffee. "Your mother was right," he said quietly. Clara entered then, holding a stack of newspapers. "The headlines came early," she said, placing them on the counter. "They already know." Elliot glanced down. Across the front page, in bold letters, "Tycoon cancels wedding amid poison scandal." Beneath it, a smaller line read, "Source claims child's warning saved his life." He closed the paper before Anna could see the photographs. She noticed anyway. "Are they saying bad things about her?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "They are only writing what happened." Clara poured herself tea. "They are writing what sells, Elliot," she corrected softly. "There is a difference." The housekeeper entered then, placing a small package on the counter. "This came for you, sir," she said, "delivered by hand." Elliot frowned and took it. Inside the unmarked envelope was a letter written in hurried strokes. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. "Isidora," he read silently. "I never meant for it to go that far. You were supposed to understand. Everything I did was for us." Anna watched his expression shift. "Is it from her?" she asked. "Yes," he said, folding the paper slowly. "It is. What does she want?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Nothing that matters anymore." He placed the letter into the drawer beside the sink and closed it firmly. Clara changed the subject gently. "Anna, would you like to take a walk in the garden later? It might help to get some air." Anna looked out the window. The roses were still there, their petals heavy from dew. "Can we water them?" she asked. "They look thirsty." Clara smiled. "Of course." An hour later, the two of them were outside. The morning fog had lifted, and the sun warmed the grass. Anna held the hose, guiding the stream of water across each row of roses. The scent filled the air, sweet, clean, alive. Elliot watched from the veranda. There was something disarming about the sight. the little girl who had turned his world upside down, now caring for the same flowers that had witnessed everything crumble. She moved with purpose, her focus absolute, like someone healing what had been hurt. When she finished, she looked up and waved. "They look better already." Elliot walked down to join her. He crouched beside her at the flower bed, the damp earth dark against his shoes. "You are right," he said. "They do look better." Anna pointed toward a single rose that had snapped during the chaos of the wedding. Its stem leaned sideways, broken but still clinging to the soil. She touched it gently. "Can we fix that one?" Elliot studied it. "Maybe," he said, "if we tie it to something that will hold it straight." She ran to the porch and returned with a ribbon she had found inside a piece of silk that had once been part of the wedding decorations. Together they tied the ribbon carefully around the stem, steadying it against a wooden stick. "There," Anna said with satisfaction. "Now it can grow again." Elliot looked at her, realizing that the words were not just about the flower. "Yes," he said. "It can." They stood together in the quiet garden, the morning breeze brushing their faces. The air felt lighter. For the first time in years, Elliot did not feel the weight of perfection pressing on his shoulders. He felt something simpler, purer, a beginning. As they turned back toward the house, Anna looked over her shoulder once more. "Do you think Mom can see the roses?" she asked. Elliot paused. "I think she can," he said softly. "And I think she is proud." Anna smiled. "Then I'm glad I came here." When they stepped inside, the house no longer felt cold. The silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of guilt or fear, but the kind that comes after a storm, when everything broken finally starts to breathe again. The following morning began with a strange stillness. The sky over the Granger estate was pale blue, the kind of color that usually promised peace. But inside the house, the air felt uneasy, as if something had shifted again during the night. Elliot Granger woke before dawn. He had fallen asleep in the chair by his desk, the glow of his laptop screen still shining faintly. Reports, messages, and endless emails waited for answers, but none of them mattered as much as the quiet breathing he had heard hours earlier from the room down the hall. That sound had grounded him. It reminded him that something in his world was still real. When he stepped out into the hallway, the house felt too large. The polished floors reflected his steps back at him, echoing through the stillness. He paused outside Anna's door. The light was off. He hesitated before knocking lightly. "Anna?" he called. No answer. He opened the door slowly. The bed was empty. The blanket had been folded neatly, the pillow fluffed. The window was open, the morning breeze pushing the curtains inward. For a brief second, his chest tightened. Then he saw it, the small ribbon she had used to tie the broken rose, resting on the nightstand beside a note. The note, written in careful handwriting, said, "I am going to see where Mom used to sing. I will be back soon." Elliot exhaled, torn between relief and fear. He knew exactly what place she meant. Down the hill behind the estate, there was an old greenhouse. It had belonged to his late wife, a glass structure filled with plants, and a small piano in the corner. She had used to sing there while painting, her voice mingling with birds and sunlight. He had not stepped inside that building since the day she died. He hurried down the gravel path, the morning air crisp against his face. When he reached the greenhouse, the door stood slightly ajar. Sunlight poured through the glass panels, scattering across the dusty floor. Inside, Anna sat on a wooden stool near the piano. Her hands were folded in her lap. She turned when she heard him enter. "You found me," she said, not startled, just calm. Elliot's voice softened. "You should have told me before you came down here. I wanted to surprise you," she said. "I wanted to see the place Mom liked." He glanced around. The air smelled of old soil and faint jasmine. The piano keys were yellowed, and cobwebs framed the windows like lace. "She spent a lot of mornings here," he said. She said it was the only place she could hear herself think. Anna stood and walked toward the piano. "Did she sing for you?" "Yes," he said. "She had a voice that could fill the whole house." "Then why did you stop coming here?" Anna asked. Elliot looked at the dust-covered keys. "Because it hurt too much." Anna nodded slowly. "It still hurts," she said, "but it feels nice here, like she never left." She pressed one of the keys, and a faint note echoed, soft but pure. Then another. The piano was still in tune, somehow. She smiled a little. "It sounds like her voice," she said. Elliot sat down beside her on the bench. "She would have liked to see you here," he said. "You remind me of her when you speak the truth, even when it is hard." Anna's expression turned thoughtful. "I think she helps me be brave," she said. "When I stood at the wedding, I was scared. My legs were shaking, but then I remembered her saying, 'If the truth hurts, it means it is alive.'" Elliot looked down at her small hands on the piano keys. "She said that to me once, too," he murmured. They sat in silence for a while, letting the morning light spill across the glass and their reflections. Then, slowly, Elliot began to play a few notes. It was a melody he barely remembered, something his wife used to hum when she thought no one was listening. Anna joined in, humming softly beside him. The tune wavered, imperfect, but full of something neither could name. When the last note faded, Anna whispered, "Dad, are you still mad at me?" He shook his head. "I was never mad," he said. "You saved me, and you saved the memory of your mother from being forgotten." She smiled, small but genuine. "Then can we come here again? Maybe plant something?" He nodded. "Yes, something strong that lasts through every season." She thought for a moment. "Like roses?" He smiled. "Yes, like Rose." Later that morning, as they returned to the house, Clara met them on the steps, worry written all over her face. "You had me frightened," she said to Anna. "When I did not find you in your room, I thought." "I am sorry," Anna said quickly. "I just wanted to see Mom's place." Clara sighed, then softened. "Next time, tell us first, all right?" Anna nodded. Elliot placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "It is fine," he said. She found something we both needed to remember. That afternoon, the greenhouse doors remained open. The scent of soil drifted through the garden, and for the first time since the chaos of the wedding, the estate did not feel haunted. It felt like a home trying to rebuild itself, quietly, one morning at a time. When night came, Elliot stood by his office window, watching the lights of the greenhouse glowing faintly below. Anna was asleep again, her ribbon once more tied in her hair. He whispered to the empty room, "She has your courage." Outside, the wind moved through the roses, carrying the faintest echo of a melody that belonged to both the past and what was still to come. 2 days passed, and the rhythm of the house began to change. Reporters had stopped waiting by the gates. The police had gathered what they needed. The scandal that once echoed through every phone call and headline had started to fade into background noise. Inside the Granger estate, the silence had taken on a different weight, less fear, more reflection. Elliot Granger sat in his study. The same room that once symbolized control. Now it smelled faintly of coffee and paper, and the large windows were open to let the air move freely. He was reading through a report from his company, but his eyes were not following the words. His thoughts were elsewhere, on the small footsteps he could hear down the hall. Anna had been quieter since their morning in the greenhouse. She had not cried, but she carried a kind of stillness that did not belong to children. Clara said it was shock. Elliot knew better. It was the weight of truth, the kind that did not fade easily, even for someone so young. When she appeared in the doorway, she was holding something in both hands, a small drawing made with colored pencils. "Can I show you something?" she asked. He looked up, relieved to see her eyes a little brighter. "Of course." She came closer and placed the drawing on his desk. It showed 2 figures standing by a piano inside a glass house. The lines were shaky, but the meaning was clear. "This is us," she said. "I tried to draw Mom too, but I do not remember her face that well." Elliot studied the paper for a long moment. The third figure was small, outlined in soft gray, as if fading into light. "You remembered her perfectly," he said. Anna smiled faintly, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Why did everyone believe her and not me, before they saw the video?" He set the drawing down carefully. "Because sometimes people see what they want to see," he said. "They believe what is comfortable, not what is right. It is easier to trust lies that sound beautiful than truths that sound painful." Anna nodded, her face thoughtful. "Then maybe they should learn to listen better." Elliot smiled. Maybe they should. Before he could say more, Clara appeared at the door. "Elliot, you should see this," she said quietly, holding a phone. The news released the investigation results. He took the phone and read. The article headline read, "Evidence confirms poison found at Granger wedding." Beneath it were photographs of the recovered vial and the chemical report. The journalist had written carefully, avoiding sensationalism. It was a short piece, factual, but enough to end any lingering doubt. When he finished reading, he handed the phone back. "It is over," he said softly. Clara exhaled. "Then maybe it can finally be quiet again." Anna looked between them. "Does that mean she will go to jail?" Elliot hesitated. "It means the people who handle justice will do what they are supposed to do." "Will you have to talk to them again?" "Yes," he said, "but not today." Later that afternoon, Elliot decided to take Anna into town. The world outside had felt distant, and he wanted her to see that life kept moving. They stopped at a small diner near the square. It was the kind of place with vinyl seats and a jukebox in the corner, the kind of place that smelled like syrup and coffee. The waitress greeted them with a smile. "Mr. Granger," she said gently, "I saw the news. I am glad you are safe." "Thank you," Elliot replied. She turned to Anna. "And you must be the brave one everyone is talking about." Anna looked startled. "Me?" The waitress nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, the one who told the truth." She leaned down and whispered, "That was a good thing to do." Anna smiled shyly and whispered back, "It was scary." "Most good things are," the waitress said kindly, then walked off to take another order. Elliot watched Anna stir her milkshake, the corners of her mouth curling up. For the first time, she looked like what she truly was, a child. Not a witness, not a savior, not a name in a headline. Just a little girl who liked chocolate milk and sunlight through the window. After they ate, they walked down the street. People glanced at them, some with curiosity, some with respect. A few strangers nodded to him, but it was Anna they smiled at. Her courage had reached further than he could have imagined. At a small bookstore, she stopped in front of the window display. "Can we go in?" she asked. Inside, she wandered between aisles, touching the spines of books carefully, as if each one held a secret. She stopped at a shelf of journals and chose one with a blue cover. "I want to write things down," she said, "so I do not forget." He paid for it, and as they walked back to the car, she clutched the journal close to her chest. "Do you think people forget truth if they stop writing it?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said, "but people like you help remind them." When they returned to the estate, the air had cooled. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the driveway. Anna ran ahead, laughing when the wind caught her braids. Elliot followed slower, watching her run through the fading light. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would still be whispers, reporters, and questions. But for now, as he watched her disappear into the doorway of their home, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. It was small and fragile, but alive like the rose she had tied with the silk ribbon, leaning but unbroken, growing back toward the Sunday. The following week began with the sound of rain. It came softly at first, tapping against the tall windows of the Granger estate, then grew into a steady rhythm that seemed to wash away the noise of the world. The house felt calm, but underneath that calm lived something waiting questions, consequences, and the quiet tension that comes after truth changes everything. Elliot Granger stood in his office again, the same place where deals had once been made and secrets had once been ignored. Now the desk held no contracts, only folders marked investigation, and a few photographs that the police had returned. The evidence was gone, sealed away in government hands, but the images stayed like ghosts. The handkerchief, the vial, the shocked faces, it was all there, preserved in still frames that could not lie. Outside the glass doors, Anna sat on the steps, watching the rain. She had wrapped herself in a large gray sweater that nearly swallowed her. Her knees were pulled to her chest, and her eyes followed the raindrops as they rolled down the railing. She looked thoughtful, not sad, just quiet in the way children sometimes are when they understand more than they should. Clara came to stand beside Elliot, her voice soft. "She has been out there for almost an hour. She likes the sound," he said. "It helps her think." "She should be playing, not thinking," Clara replied. "She has seen more truth than most adults," Elliot said. "You cannot unsee something like that." Clara nodded and left him to his thoughts. After a few minutes, Elliot stepped outside and walked down the steps until he was beside Anna. The rain had softened again, a fine mist drifting through the air. He sat next to her, letting his shoes get wet. "You will catch a cold," he said gently. She shook her head. "I like the rain. It makes everything clean." He followed her gaze across the garden. The roses they had tied days ago stood straighter now, the silk ribbon bright against the green stems. "Maybe that is what it is doing," he said. "Cleaning things." Anna looked at him. "Did the police find anything else?" He hesitated. "They confirmed what we already knew," he said. "The poison was real, and it was meant for me." She was silent for a long moment. "Why did she want to hurt you?" He took a slow breath. "Sometimes, people think love means control," he said. "They try to hold someone so tightly that it turns into something else, something dangerous." Anna's eyes lowered. "That does not sound like love." "It is not," he said. "Real love protects. It does not destroy." A flash of lightning lit the garden, followed by the distant roll of thunder. Anna did not flinch. She was calm, her small frame still against the gray light. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Of storms?" he asked with a faint smile. "Not anymore." "No," she said softly. "Of people not believing you again." He looked at her for a long time before answering. "I am scared of forgetting what this feels like," he said. "The truth is heavy, but lies are heavier." She nodded slowly, as if she understood more than he expected. From the house, Clara's voice called them for breakfast. They went inside together, leaving wet footprints on the marble floor. The kitchen smelled of pancakes and butter. The warmth of it felt almost unreal after the cold rain. As they ate, the television played softly in the background. A reporter's voice mentioned the Granger case briefly before moving to another story. Anna listened for a moment, then turned to Elliot. "Do I have to talk to them?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, you already said everything that needed to be said. The rest is for the adults to handle." She seemed relieved. "Good," she said. "I do not like cameras." He smiled. "Neither do I." After breakfast, Elliot received a phone call from Detective Morgan, the officer assigned to the case. The conversation was short but serious. When it ended, his face had changed, less tension, more finality. "What did they say?" Clara asked. "It is official," he said. "They have filed charges. There will be a hearing next month." Clara looked toward Anna, who was drawing quietly at the table. "Will she have to go?" "No," Elliot said firmly. "I will not let that happen." That afternoon, Anna asked to visit the greenhouse again. The rain had stopped, and a thin sunlight filtered through the clouds. Inside, the air was damp but sweet, filled with the scent of new growth. The piano stood in its corner, untouched. She walked over to it and pressed one of the keys. "It sounds softer when it rains," she said. Elliot leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe that is how the house says thank you," he said. "For what?" "For bringing music back." She turned toward him. "Do you think Mom knows what happened?" He smiled gently. "If she does, she also knows you were brave." Anna's gaze shifted toward the rose plant they had tied. "She always told me that people get hurt when others stay quiet," she said. "I did not want to stay quiet anymore." Elliot felt something tighten in his chest, the kind of ache that came not from sadness, but from understanding. "You did the right thing, Anna," he said. "Even when it was hard." They stayed there until the sky turned gold. When they walked back to the house, the path was lined with puddles, each reflecting the last light of day. Anna jumped over them one by one, her laughter echoing faintly through the air. By the time they reached the door, Elliot realized something simple but profound. The storm was over, not because the evidence had been found, not because justice had begun, but because truth had taken root in their home, steady as the roses that had survived the rain. The days that followed carried a quiet rhythm, like the house itself was trying to remember what peace sounded like. The sound of rain had faded, replaced by sunlight and birds nesting in the tall oak trees. The Granger estate looked almost the same as it had before the wedding, elegant, symmetrical, untouched, but the people inside it were not the same at all. Elliot Granger spent most of his mornings in his office, but his focus no longer belonged to the papers stacked on his desk. He found himself rereading old letters, pieces of handwriting he had not touched in years. Some were from investors, some from colleagues, and one, folded neatly inside an envelope that had begun to yellow with age, was from his late wife. The letter was short, written on stationery from a hotel where she had once stayed for an art show. "Do not let success make you forget softness," it said. "The world already has enough hard men. Be the one who listens." He read it again and again until the ink felt familiar under his fingers. That afternoon, he walked down the hall toward the greenhouse. The sound of piano notes drifted through the air before he even reached the door. Anna was inside, sitting on the bench, pressing the keys slowly, one at a time, as though she was testing which sounds still belonged to her. She turned when she saw him. "I am practicing," she said proudly. "I want to learn the song you played with Mom." He smiled, stepping inside. The glass panels shimmered in the sunlight, scattering patches of gold across the floor. "You already remember most of it," he said. "Can you teach me the rest?" she asked. Elliot sat beside her. "I can try." They played together for a while. The music filled the greenhouse. Not perfect, not polished, but alive. Each note seemed to stitch something back together between them. When they stopped, the air felt lighter. Anna looked thoughtful. "Dad," she said, "did Mom know about Isadora?" He hesitated. "No," he said finally. "It happened after she passed. I thought I was building something new, but I see now it was only a way to forget." Anna traced the edge of a piano key with her finger. "Mom would not want you to forget," she said softly. "She would want you to remember her in good ways." "I think you are right," he said. They sat in silence for a while before Anna spoke again. "Do you think I should visit her?" "Your mother?" She nodded. "At the cemetery." Elliot exhaled, his heart heavy but certain. "Yes," he said. "We should go together." The next morning, they drove out of the city. The road wound between fields of green, and the sky stretched endlessly above them. Anna sat quietly in the passenger seat, her hands folded over her blue journal. She had begun writing in it every night, filling pages with short sentences, some memories, some questions. When they reached the cemetery, she stepped out first. The air was warm, filled with the faint scent of wildflowers. The gravestones stood in neat rows, each one marked with a name and a story that had ended too soon. Elliot carried a small bouquet of white roses. Anna carried one of the roses they had saved from the garden, its silk ribbon still tied around the stem. They walked to the stone marked Elizabeth Granger. The letters were carved deep and clean, though time had begun to soften their edges. Anna knelt first. She brushed away a few leaves that had fallen across the inscription. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. "It has been a long time." Elliot knelt beside her. He placed the white roses at the base of the stone. "You would have been proud of her," he whispered. "She saved me in a way I did not know I needed." Anna looked up at him. "Can I tell her what happened?" "Yes," he said. So she did. She told her mother about the wedding, about the handkerchief, about the fear and the truth that had followed. She told her how scared she had been, and how she had remembered the lessons her mother taught her. She did not cry. She simply spoke as if her mother was sitting there, listening. When she finished, she placed the single rose with the ribbon next to the others. "We fixed the garden," she said softly, "and we are going to plant more." The wind picked up, brushing through the trees. Elliot felt something shift in his chest, a release he had not known he was holding. The ache that had lived there for years felt quieter, like it finally had permission to rest. On the drive home, Anna leaned her head against the window. "Do you think she heard me?" she asked. "I know she did," he said. That night, after Anna had fallen asleep, Elliot returned to the greenhouse. The moonlight poured through the glass roof, painting silver patterns on the floor. He sat at the piano and began to play the same melody they had practiced earlier. Each note carried the weight of memory, but also something new peace. He realized then that the truth had not only saved him from Isadora's deception, it had pulled him back to the family he had lost and the daughter he had almost forgotten how to see. When the song ended, he looked toward the rose plants by the wall. Their leaves glistened in the moonlight. The one tied with silk stood straight now, alive and strong. He whispered into the quiet air. "She did it, Elizabeth. She brought us back." Outside, the garden swayed gently in the night breeze, as if the world itself was breathing again. Morning light broke through the curtains, warm and gold. It was the first morning in weeks that felt calm, almost ordinary. Birds perched on the window ledge, pecking softly at the glass as if to wake the house. The air smelled faintly of coffee and the roses that had begun to bloom again outside. Elliot Granger sat at the kitchen table, reading a folder of legal documents. Across from him, Anna was finishing her breakfast, a small plate of pancakes and strawberries. She had syrup on her fingertips, but she was focused on the sketchbook in front of her. The pages were full of drawings, pianos, flowers, and faces that looked like her parents. Clara entered with her usual quiet grace. "Good morning," she said. "They called again from the courthouse. The hearing has been confirmed for next Monday." Elliot looked up from the papers. "Thank you, Clara." Anna's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Does that mean you have to go there?" "Yes," he said gently. "I will have to speak. But you will not need to. You have already done everything you were supposed to do." She looked down at her plate. "I do not like courthouses," she said softly. "They sound like places where people yell." He smiled faintly. "Some people do yell," he admitted. "But mostly, they listen. And that is what matters." She nodded slowly. "Are you scared?" Elliot folded the folder closed. "A little," he said honestly. "But I am not scared of the truth anymore." After breakfast, they walked into the garden together. The morning air was fresh and full of life. Bees moved between flowers, and the sun made the dew sparkle like glass. Anna carried her sketchbook under her arm. She liked to draw outside, where the light changed every few minutes. As she sat under the oak tree, she began sketching the greenhouse. Elliot stood nearby, trimming one of the taller rose bushes. "Dad," she called, "what will happen after the hearing?" He paused. "After the hearing, we will keep living," he said. "We will take care of the house, the garden, the business, and you will keep drawing." She tilted her head, thinking, "Will people stop asking questions?" "Eventually," he said. "People always find new stories to chase." She smiled. "Then we can have our own story." Elliot nodded. "Yes, one that belongs only to us." Later that day, he received a phone call from Detective Morgan. The voice on the other end was calm but direct. "Mr. Granger," the detective said, "I wanted to inform you that the toxicology report is finalized. The substance found in the handkerchief matches the compound from your late wife's case." Elliot closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the words. "So, it is confirmed," he said quietly. "Yes, sir," the detective replied. "It means your daughter saved your life, and perhaps gave justice to your wife as well." After the call ended, Elliot stood in silence. The truth had come full circle, and it hurt in a way that felt clean like air finally filling a room that had been locked for years. He walked to the greenhouse. Anna was there again, playing a few uneven notes on the piano. The melody was shaky, but determined. She looked up when he entered. "Did they say something bad?" "No," he said softly. "Something good. They said your mother's truth is safe now." Her eyes brightened. "Then maybe she can rest better." He nodded, his voice low. "I think we all can." They spent the afternoon in the garden. Anna drew while Elliot repaired the wooden fence along the side path. Every so often, she would call him over to show him a new sketch. One was of the rose with the silk ribbon. Another was of the piano with sunlight spilling across the keys. When she finished, she flipped to a blank page and began drawing something new. Elliot leaned over her shoulder. "What are you making this time?" She smiled. "A family portrait, the new one." He watched as she drew 3 figures, him, her, and a woman standing between them. The woman's outline was soft, drawn with light pencil strokes, almost like a memory. "It is beautiful," he said. Anna looked at it thoughtfully. "I think she is happy now," she whispered. That evening, as the sun set, they sat together on the back steps, watching the sky turn pink and orange. The air smelled like summer. Anna rested her head against his arm. "Dad," she said, her voice small and sleepy, "when people do bad things, does that mean they stop being good forever?" He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "It means they forgot who they were. But sometimes, the truth helps them remember again." She considered his answer carefully. "Then maybe Isadora can remember someday." He looked down at her and smiled sadly. "Maybe she can." As the first stars appeared, he whispered, "Your mother would be proud of you." Anna yawned. "You said that before, and I will say it again," he said, "because it will always be true." By the time the sky turned dark, Anna had fallen asleep against his shoulder. Elliot stayed still, listening to the quiet heartbeat of the night. the soft hum of crickets, and the whisper of the roses moving in the breeze. He realized then that the truth, painful as it was, had given him something he had not expected: a second chance. Not just at justice, but at being a father who listened. Inside the house, the old piano waited in the greenhouse, and the rose with the silk ribbon glowed faintly in the moonlight, a silent witness to everything they had survived. The morning of the hearing arrived clear and cold. A light wind moved through the streets of the city, carrying the sound of traffic and the distant rhythm of footsteps. Inside the courthouse, everything smelled of paper and polished wood, a place built for judgment and truth. Elliot Granger stood near the large glass doors, his reflection caught between the world outside and the one he was about to face. He was dressed simply, in a dark suit and a white shirt without a tie. His hands rested loosely at his sides, but his jaw was tight. Behind him, Clara walked quietly, holding a folder with documents and letters from the investigators. She spoke in a low voice. "The detectives are already inside. They said it will not take long." Elliot nodded. "Good." Anna was not there. She was home with the housekeeper, painting in the greenhouse. Elliot had promised her she would not have to come. He wanted her world to stay untouched by courtrooms and headlines. Still, as he waited, he could almost hear her voice in his mind, steady, small, and brave. "Do not let them forget what really happened." When they entered the courtroom, the air felt heavy. Journalists filled the back rows, notebooks in hand, cameras lowered in respect. The judge sat at the front, calm and unreadable. Across the room, Isadora sat with her attorney, her face pale and distant. She looked smaller than she had the day of the wedding, as if the walls of her lies had finally closed in. The proceedings began quietly. The prosecutor read through the evidence laboratory results, testimonies, and the security video that Anna had brought forward. The judge listened without expression. When it was Elliot's turn to speak, he rose and walked to the stand. For a moment, the room felt silent enough to hear the hum of the lights. "Mr. Granger," the prosecutor said, "can you confirm that the child in the recording is your daughter?" "Yes," Elliot said. His voice was low but clear. "Her name is Anna. Did she inform you of what she had seen before the incident at the wedding?" "She tried to," he said. "I did not listen. I believed what was comfortable instead of what was true." He paused, glancing toward Isadora. Her eyes flickered but did not meet his. "When she spoke at the wedding," he continued, "she did something no adult there had the courage to do. She stopped me from making the worst mistake of my life." There was a rustle of movement in the courtroom, a few reporters scribbling notes, the sound of someone clearing their throat. The prosecutor nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Granger." Elliot returned to his seat, his pulse steady. For the first time in years, he felt like he had said something that mattered. The rest of the hearing passed slowly. Isadora's lawyer argued that the evidence had been misinterpreted, that her actions were not premeditated. But when the judge replayed the video again, the truth stood on its own. By midday, the gavel struck once. The charges were confirmed. The hearing would move to a full trial in several weeks. Isadora was escorted out quietly, her face hidden by her hands. The cameras followed her, but the silence she left behind was louder than any headline. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward Elliot. Microphones and cameras surrounded him, voices overlapping. "Mr. Granger, what will happen next? How is your daughter handling all this? Do you have anything to say to Isadora?" He raised a hand. "My daughter has said everything that needed to be said," he told them. "I only hope people remember what she taught us, that truth does not need permission to speak." Then he walked away, leaving the crowd to chase their own noise. When he returned home that afternoon, the air felt warmer. The rain that had threatened in the morning never came. From the driveway, he could see through the greenhouse windows. Anna was inside, her small figure moving between the piano and the rose plants. She ran to the door when she saw him. "Did it go okay?" she asked. He knelt down, meeting her eyes. "It went as well as it could," he said. The truth was heard. She looked relieved. "Then Mom can rest now." "Yes," he said softly. "She can." They walked out to the garden together. The roses were blooming fully now, red and pink and white. The silk ribbon that held the once broken stem had faded in the sun but remained strong. Anna touched it gently. "It did not break," she said. "No," Elliot said. "It grew stronger because it was broken." As the evening came, they sat on the back steps. The sky stretched wide and golden. Clara brought them tea, and the house filled with a quiet kind of peace. Anna opened her blue journal, flipping through pages filled with her handwriting. "Can I read you something?" she asked. He nodded. She read aloud, her voice clear and steady. "Sometimes the world feels too big for little voices, but little voices can still be loud enough to change it. The truth is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. But if you listen closely, it can save you." Elliot felt his throat tighten. "You wrote that?" She nodded. "I think Mom helped me with the words." He smiled, his eyes warm. "Then it is perfect." As the sun disappeared behind the hills, Elliot realized that what had begun as a warning had turned into something larger, a story about courage, about loss, and about finding light again. And beside him, the little girl who had saved him leaned against his arm, her head resting there, safe and quiet, as the evening folded gently around them. The week after the hearing moved slowly, like the house itself was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The noise of reporters had faded, and the front gates of the Granger estate stood closed, guarded by silence. The world outside still talked about the case, but inside, everything was soft, almost fragile, as if the truth had left behind both relief and exhaustion. On the morning of the visit to the detention center, the air was pale gray. Clouds stretched low, pressing against the city skyline. Elliot Granger drove alone, the hum of the engine steady beneath his thoughts. He had not told Anna where he was going. Some conversations, he knew, were not meant for a child to hear. When he arrived, the officer at the desk recognized him immediately. "Mr. Granger," the man said, his tone neutral. "She has requested to see you. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes," Elliot replied quietly. "I need to." He followed the officer down a long hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Each step echoed, the sound sharp against the cold floor. At the end of the hall, a door opened to a small visitation room. Isadora sat at the table, her hands folded in front of her. The orange uniform could not hide the exhaustion on her face. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment, her expression softened. "Elliot," she said. Her voice was small, almost human again. He did not sit immediately. He stood across from her, studying the woman he had once thought he loved. There was no anger in his eyes now, only the weight of disappointment and the calm that comes from finally understanding. "You wanted to see me," he said. She nodded. "I do not expect forgiveness," she began. "I just wanted to explain." He waited, silent. Isadora's hands trembled slightly. "I was desperate," she said. "You were slipping away, and I could feel it. Everything I had built was about to disappear. I thought, if something happened, people would pity me, and you would stay." Her words hung in the air, raw and hollow. "You thought poisoning me would make me stay?" he asked. Tears filled her eyes. "I did not think clearly. I just wanted control. You have always been so calm, so untouchable. I wanted to be the one who could break that." Elliot took a deep breath. "You did break something," he said, "but not me. You broke the last part of my life that was built on lies." Isadora looked down. "She is brave, your daughter." I could not even look at her when she spoke. "That child has more strength than I ever had." "She saved my life," he said simply. "And she saved something of yours, too." Isadora frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "She gave you a chance to tell the truth," he said, "before it is too late." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Isadora whispered, "I am sorry, Elliot." "I believe you," he said, "but I cannot help you. Only honesty can." He stood, ready to leave, but before he turned to the door, she spoke again. Tell Anna I am sorry, too." He hesitated, then nodded once. "I will." Outside, the air smelled of rain again. He looked up at the clouds and thought of his daughter, the way she had stood in front of hundreds of people and spoken the truth when he had not dared to. The courage she carried was something neither fame nor money could teach. When he returned home later that afternoon, Anna was in the garden, crouched beside the roses. The silk ribbon had faded even more, now nearly white. She was tying a new one, a bright blue strip she had cut from her old dress. "You replaced it," he said, walking toward her. She smiled. The old one was tired. It needed a rest. He knelt beside her. That is a good way to put it. She looked up at him, curious. Where did you go today? He paused for a moment, then answered honestly. I went to see her. Anna's hands stilled. Did she say anything? She said she was sorry, he said. And that she knows you are brave. Oh. Anna's gaze dropped to the ground. Do you believe her? He thought carefully. I believe she meant it. Sometimes, people realize the truth too late. But even then, it still matters. Anna nodded slowly. Then maybe she can start over one day. Maybe, he said softly. But we have to start over too. As they finished tying the ribbon, the evening sun began to break through the clouds. Light spilled across the garden, glinting off the raindrops that still clung to the leaves. Anna stood and brushed the dirt from her knees. Dad, she said, looking toward the greenhouse. Can we play Mom's song again tonight? He smiled, feeling something warm settle in his chest. Yes, he said, we can. That night, the house was filled with the sound of the piano, the melody soft, steady, and familiar. Anna sat beside him, humming under her breath, her voice blending with the music. The notes rose and fell like waves, washing through the halls and settling into the corners of a home that was finally learning how to breathe again. When the last note faded, Anna rested her head against his shoulder. It sounds happy now, she said. It does, he replied, because it finally belongs to the truth. Outside, the blue ribbon fluttered gently in the evening wind, a new color against the fading light, proof that even broken things could grow back beautiful when they were cared for with honesty and love. The next morning began with a clear sky, the kind of blue that carried no weight of storms or headlines. The city had gone quiet about the scandal. News channels had found new stories, and the world had moved on. But inside the Granger estate, life had only just begun to find its rhythm again. Elliot Granger stood in the garden, pruning the rose bushes with careful hands. The blue ribbon fluttered gently in the breeze, tied neatly where Anna had placed it the day before. Its color caught the sunlight like a small promise of renewal. He breathed in the scent of the flowers and thought of how silence could be healing when it was not empty. Anna was in the greenhouse, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her journal open across her lap. She was writing again, her pencil tapping softly against the page between sentences. She had started a new section titled, What the Truth Sounds Like. The letters were neat, written in the same patient rhythm that now filled her voice whenever she spoke. When Elliot stepped inside, she looked up and smiled. I am writing about Mom, she said. He smiled back. What about her? Anna turned the page toward him. About how she liked light better than shadows. I think she would be happy that the house feels bright again. He read her words carefully. They were simple but carried a kind of wisdom that made him quiet for a long time. You have your mother's heart, he said. She believed that light never leaves, even when you cannot see it. Anna closed her journal and stood. Can we go see her again today? Elliot hesitated only for a moment. Yes, he said softly. I think she would like that. They left late that afternoon, the air warm with the scent of cut grass and the hum of insects. The drive to the cemetery was peaceful. The roads wound through quiet streets lined with trees that swayed gently in the wind. When they arrived, Anna carried another bouquet of roses this time, the ones they had grown together. The stems were tied with the blue ribbon she had replaced in the garden. As they walked between the rows of graves, Elliot noticed how easily she moved among the stones. There was no fear in her, only calm understanding. When they reached Elizabeth Granger's headstone, Anna knelt and began clearing away the leaves again, just as she had before. Hi, Mom, she whispered. We brought the roses we grew ourselves. Elliot stood behind her, his hands resting in his coat pockets. The sunlight filtered through the branches above, laying soft gold on the stone. He spoke quietly. She would be proud of you, Anna. You kept the promise you made to her. Anna looked up. Do you think she knows that the truth is out now? I think she does, he said, and I think she knows it came from you. They stayed for a while, not speaking much. Anna traced the carved letters of her mother's name with her fingertips. I do not remember her voice exactly, she said after a while, but I remember how it felt when she sang. It made everything soft. Elliot smiled gently. That is how I remember it too. As they stood to leave, Anna placed one of the roses at the base of the stone. "I think she can rest now," she said. Back at the house that evening, the air was still and golden. The sun poured through the windows, painting the floors in long stripes of light. Clara prepared tea, and the scent of lemon and honey drifted through the hall. Elliot sat by the window, the same window where he had once stood lost in guilt. Now he watched Anna in the garden. She was watering the plants, her small figure steady and purposeful. He could hear her humming through the open glass. It was the melody from the piano, the song her mother had written. For the first time in years, Elliot felt peace stretch across every room of the house. The piano, once silent, now held fingerprints on its keys. The greenhouse, once filled with dust, now breathed again. Even the walls seemed lighter, carrying laughter instead of echoes. As twilight came, Anna ran back inside. Her cheeks were flushed from the cool air. "Dad," she said, holding up her journal, "I finished the story about us." He took the book and opened to the last page. At the bottom, she had written in her careful handwriting, "The truth did not ruin us. It saved us. It just took time for us to see." He looked at her with quiet pride. "That is the best ending I have ever read," he said. "Do you think Mom would like it?" she asked. "I think she helped you write it," he said softly. That night, as they sat together in the living room, the fire flickered gently in the hearth. The air was warm, and the house seemed to hum with its own heartbeat. Anna leaned her head against his arm, her eyes heavy with sleep. Elliot whispered, more to himself than to anyone else, "We made it through." Outside, the roses swayed under the moonlight. The blue ribbon shimmered faintly in the dark, catching every bit of light it could, as if to remind the world that even truth, when it hurts, can still be beautiful. And in that quiet moment, Elliot realized that his daughter had not only saved his life, she had saved his faith in love, in goodness, and in the simple courage of a voice that dared to speak when no one else would. The next few days moved quietly, each sunrise folding into the next like the slow rhythm of a heart learning to beat without fear. The Granger estate had become a place of gentle routine, mornings filled with birdsong, afternoons spent in the garden, and evenings where the piano's soft notes replaced what used to be silence. Elliot Granger began rising earlier than usual. He liked the stillness of dawn, the moment before the world truly woke. Most mornings, he found himself walking the perimeter of the property, his footsteps slow and steady against the dew-covered grass. Every sound, from the creak of the old oak to the low hum of the wind, reminded him that life, fragile as it was, had kept going. Inside, Anna had made the greenhouse her sanctuary. It had become more than a room of glass and soil. It was her safe place, a space where she could draw, read, or simply listen to the soft pulse of the earth beneath her. That morning, she sat on the wooden bench near the piano, sketching with quiet focus. A cup of hot cocoa steamed beside her. When Elliot entered, she smiled without looking up. "I was wondering when you would come," she said. He chuckled softly. "You always seem to know. I heard your footsteps on the gravel," she said, her eyes still on the paper, "and the roses move differently when you walk by." He sat down beside her, amused. "They do?" She nodded, serious but gentle. "They lean toward you, like they remember your voice." Elliot looked at the roses in their rows, some new, some old, each one carrying a trace of the days that had nearly broken him. "Maybe they remember your mother's songs," he said. "That sound never really leaves." Anna paused her drawing and turned to him. "Do you ever wish she could see us now?" "Every day," he said. "But I think she does. She would be proud of how brave you are." Anna smiled faintly, then looked back at her sketch. "I am drawing the greenhouse," she explained, "but I want to make it look like it is made of light instead of glass." He nodded. "That sounds beautiful." As the day went on, the air grew warmer. Clara joined them in the garden with a tray of lemonade and small sandwiches. She watched Anna draw and said softly, "You have your mother's patience." Anna smiled. "Dad says that too." Clara looked toward Elliot. "And you," she said kindly, "finally look like you are breathing again." He gave a small, grateful smile. "I think I am." That afternoon, a letter arrived. The envelope was official, stamped with the seal of the city courthouse. Elliot opened it carefully, his expression unreadable as he scanned the page. When he finished, he folded it once and set it down. Anna looked up from her drawing. Is it about the trial? Yes, he said. They have set the final date. It will be next month. Will you have to go again? I will, he said, but not for long. She was quiet for a moment. Will she have to stay there forever? Elliot hesitated before answering. For a while, he said honestly, long enough to understand what she did. Anna nodded, accepting the answer without tears or anger. Then maybe when she remembers the truth, she will become better. Elliot looked at her, struck by how she could hold compassion without bitterness. You really believe that? She nodded. Mom said people are not bad, just lost. Some stay lost longer than others. He smiled softly. You sound just like her. That evening, the weather shifted. A soft drizzle began to fall, the kind that brushed the windows without a sound. Inside the greenhouse, the light was dim, golden through the mist. Anna sat by the piano again, her fingers hovering over the keys. Play something, Elliot said from the doorway. She shook her head shyly. Not yet. I am still learning. He walked closer. Then I will play, and you can hum. He began the melody slowly, the same one that had carried them through the hardest nights. Anna joined in with a low hum, her voice soft and steady. The sound filled the greenhouse like a heartbeat. When the last note faded, she looked up at him. It sounds different every time you play it, she said. That is because it grows with us, he replied. Music changes when people do. Before bed, Anna stood by the window in her room, looking out at the glowing garden. The blue ribbon on the rose shimmered faintly in the rainlight. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, Good night, Mom. Down the hall, Elliot sat in his study, the open courthouse letter still on the desk. He looked at it one last time before closing the folder and setting it aside. The truth had already done its work. It had cost them pain, yes, but it had also given them back something stronger, clarity, forgiveness, and a sense of belonging that no courtroom could decide. As the house grew still, the rain deepened, a steady rhythm against the roof. Elliot listened to it from his chair, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face. He imagined the sound carrying through the halls, past the paintings, the piano, and finally to the little girl sleeping down the hall, the one whose voice had turned a warning into a miracle. And in that quiet, with only the rain as witness, he realized that redemption did not always arrive with grand gestures or sudden forgiveness. Sometimes, it came softly like the sound of rain on roses, steady and alive, washing everything clean again. The following morning arrived with a thin silver fog curling around the Granger estate. It was early autumn now, the kind of season where the air felt both sharp and gentle, where the earth seemed to breathe slower. The garden had changed again, roses deepened in color, the blue ribbon faded to the softness of the sky. Yet, even as the seasons turned, peace lingered in the house like a visitor who had finally decided to stay. Elliot Granger was already awake when the first light touched the windows. He stood by the kitchen counter, waiting for the coffee to brew. The steam rose quietly, carrying the faint smell of roasted beans. Across from him, Clara arranged fresh bread on a tray, humming under her breath. Anna entered a few minutes later, her small footsteps padding softly against the marble floor. She was wearing a yellow sweater 2 sizes too big, her braids slightly uneven. "Good morning," she said, her voice bright but still soft with sleep. Elliot smiled. "Good morning, sunshine. Did you dream about anything good?" She nodded. "I dreamed we were flying over the garden. Mom was there too." She was laughing. He paused for a moment, letting the image settle in his heart. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." Anna climbed onto the stool by the counter. "I think she wanted us to see the flowers from above," she said. "They looked like stars." Clara smiled gently. "Then she is watching over them, and over you." After breakfast, Elliot had to make a call to the courthouse to confirm the next steps for the trial. He kept his tone calm, his words measured, but every detail still weighed heavy. When he hung up, Anna was standing at the doorway, her eyes curious. "Did they say something new?" she asked. "They just confirmed the date again," he replied. "It will happen soon, but it is all right, sweetheart. We are ready for whatever comes." Anna nodded but stayed quiet for a while. Then she said softly, "I want to be there when it ends." Elliot turned to face her fully. "You do not have to," he said. You have done enough. You deserve peace. I know, she said, her voice calm, but I want to hear the truth one last time. Not for her, for Mom. Her words struck something deep in him. He saw his late wife's reflection in that small, steady gaze. There was no fear in it, only grace. We will see, he said finally. Later that morning, they went outside together. The fog had begun to lift, revealing the garden in soft gold. Anna carried her journal and a basket of tools for pruning. She had learned how to care for the plants herself, and every cut she made was careful, as though she understood that each stem carried a memory. Do you know, she said, her voice drifting through the air, that roses need to be trimmed so they can grow again. Elliot smiled faintly. I suppose people are like that too. Sometimes we have to let go of things that hurt, even if they were beautiful once. Anna nodded, her eyes still on the petals. Like Mom letting go of us so we could keep growing. His throat tightened. Yes, he said softly. Just like that. They worked together in silence for a while. The sound of shears clipping through branches blended with the wind moving through the trees. Every now and then, Anna would hum a note of the melody they always played at the piano. It drifted faintly, the tune now part of the air that wrapped around their home. Around midday, Clara called them back inside for lunch. As they ate, the doorbell rang. Elliot excused himself and went to the front hall. A courier stood there holding a small brown package. Delivery for Mr. Granger, the man said. Elliot signed and took it inside. When he opened the box, he froze. Inside lay a small photograph frame wrapped carefully in tissue paper. It was an old photo, his late wife holding baby Anna in her arms, standing in front of the greenhouse. Behind the photo, tucked neatly inside the frame, was a handwritten note. It read, "Found this among evidence items during case review, returning to rightful owner." Elliot stared at the photograph for a long time. It had been years since he had seen that moment, his wife smiling, her hair wild in the wind, sunlight on her face. He felt a warmth bloom in his chest that he had not felt since she passed. When Anna saw the picture, she gasped softly. "That is me," she said. "And Mom." "I do not remember that day." He handed her the frame carefully. "You were only a few months old," he said. "It was the last picture we took before the accident." Anna traced her small finger along her mother's face. "She looks happy." "She was," he said quietly. "So were we." That evening, after the sun went down, they placed the photo in the greenhouse, right above the piano. The light from the lantern reflected off the glass, making the image shimmer as though alive. Anna looked up at it and whispered, "Now she can listen every time we play." Elliot nodded. Every time. They played together again that night, their notes steady and full. Each sound filled the air, echoing through the garden, through the roses, through every place that had once held sorrow. And as the melody rose higher, Elliot realized that what they had built, their truth, their love, their forgiveness, was something that would outlast the trial, the pain, and even the passing of time. When the music faded, Anna closed the piano lid gently and looked up at her father. "Dad," she said, "do you think truth has a sound?" He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Yes," he said softly. "It sounds exactly like this." And for the first time since everything had begun, the house felt whole, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Outside, the moonlight touched the roses, and the blue ribbon shimmered again, whispering against the wind like a voice that had never really gone away. The morning of the trial arrived with a sky so clear it almost felt fragile. The air outside the Granger estate was cool, crisp, and silent. No reporters, no cameras, just the quiet hum of a world moving forward. The roses along the path were still wet with dew, their petals open wide, as if listening. Inside the house, everything was calm but heavy with the understanding that this day would mark an ending and a beginning. Elliot Granger stood in front of the mirror in his study, adjusting the collar of his dark gray suit. His reflection looked steady, but beneath that stillness was a quiet ache. The kind of ache that comes when you know truth has already won, yet your heart still trembles at the cost it demanded. Anna entered softly, her footsteps light against the wooden floor. She was holding her small blue journal close to her chest. "Are you leaving soon?" she asked. He turned toward her and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. I will be back before evening." She hesitated. "Can I come this time?" He crouched down so their eyes met. "No, Anna, I want you to stay here with Clara. It is going to be long, and it will not be a place for you." She bit her lip. "But I want to know when it is over. I want to hear it from you." He smiled softly. "You will, I promise." Anna looked at him for a moment longer, then opened her journal. She pulled out a folded paper and handed it to him. "Then take this," she said. "You can read it when you need strength." He unfolded it just enough to see her handwriting, neat, careful letters that read, "Truth is brave when love stands beside it." Elliot's eyes softened. "You wrote this?" She nodded. "It is for you, so you do not forget." He kissed her forehead gently. "I will not forget, ever." The drive to the courthouse was quiet. The trees along the highway were beginning to turn golden, their leaves scattering like pieces of light. When he arrived, the world outside the courthouse was subdued. The frenzy that once surrounded the case had faded. Now there was only curiosity mixed with fatigue. Inside, the courtroom looked the same as before: cold wood, high ceilings, and light pouring through tall windows. But something felt different this time. The tension that had once filled the air had been replaced by inevitability. Isadora sat at the defense table. She looked thinner, her hands folded neatly on the desk, her gaze fixed on nothing. Elliot watched her for a long moment. He no longer saw the woman who had once tried to control him through charm and deceit. He saw someone who had lost herself long before she ever tried to destroy him. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The sound of shuffling feet echoed through the room. Then the proceedings began. The prosecutor spoke first, summarizing the evidence, chemical analysis, security footage, testimony. It was all the same story, but today it carried finality. When it was Elliot's turn to speak, he walked to the stand without notes, holding Anna's folded paper in his hand. "Mr. Granger," the judge said, "you may proceed." He nodded. His voice, when he began, was calm and steady. "Your Honor, I am not here to ask for punishment. The truth has already done what punishment cannot. It has freed my family. My daughter, Anna, saved my life, not only from the poison, but from the blindness of believing comfort over honesty. She reminded me that the smallest voice can sometimes carry the greatest truth." He paused, unfolding Anna's note and glancing at it before continuing. "She wrote this for me today. It says, 'Truth is brave when love stands beside it.' I think that is all anyone needs to remember." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge seemed still. Elliot folded the paper again, his voice softer now. "I do not wish her harm," he said, turning his eyes toward Isadora. "I only hope she finds the courage to face herself the way my daughter did." He stepped down from the stand, and the rest of the trial unfolded in quiet order. Witnesses spoke briefly, lawyers presented closing remarks, and then the judge rendered the verdict, guilty on all counts. When the gavel struck, it echoed like a door closing gently rather than slamming shut. Isadora stood to be escorted out. For a moment, her eyes met Elliot's. She did not speak, but she mouthed the words, "Thank you." He gave a small nod, not in forgiveness, but in understanding. Outside, the sky had turned pale gold. Elliot stepped into the sunlight and felt its warmth spread across his face. For the first time in months, he felt truly light, like something inside him had been lifted and carried away. When he returned home that evening, Anna ran to meet him at the door. "Is it over?" she asked. He knelt and hugged her tightly. "Yes, it is over. Did you read it?" she asked, looking up at him. He smiled. "I did, and it helped me." She grinned, her eyes bright. "Then can we play the song again tonight?" "Of course," he said. "We will play it as loud as we want." That night, the greenhouse filled with the glow of lanterns. The photo of her mother shimmered on the piano, and Anna's laughter echoed between the glass walls. When they played, the notes rose through the air soft, steady, and alive. And as the melody filled the night, Elliot realized that truth was not a single moment of revelation. It was a choice, one they would keep making, every day, together. Outside, the blue ribbon on the roses moved with the wind, whispering in rhythm with the music, a living reminder that courage could bloom from even the most broken soil. The days following the verdict carried a different kind of quiet. It was not the silence of fear or uncertainty anymore. It was the calm that comes after truth has finally spoken and everyone knows where they stand. The Granger estate, once heavy with shadows, had turned into a place of stillness and healing. The roses bloomed richer than before, their colors deeper, their scent stronger. It was as if the garden itself had forgiven the world. Elliot Granger spent the next few mornings tending the soil with his daughter beside him. Anna had learned to move through the garden like she had always belonged there, barefoot, careful, and curious. Every morning, she greeted each plant out loud, as though they were friends who needed to be reminded they were alive. "Good morning, Red Rose," she whispered to one. "You look like you slept well." Elliot smiled as he watched her. "You talk to them as if they can hear you." "They can," she said simply. "Plants like to be spoken to with kindness." He nodded. "Maybe that is why they keep growing stronger." After their work in the garden, Anna ran to the greenhouse, where she had started painting again. She had turned one of the wooden tables into a small art station, covered with watercolor paints and pages from her journal. Each page carried something different, a memory, a word, a color that meant something only to her. That afternoon, Clara entered the greenhouse, wiping her hands on her apron. "You have been quiet all day," she said gently. "What are you making?" Anna smiled without looking up. "A surprise for Dad." Clara tilted her head, curious. "What kind of surprise?" Anna lifted the paper slightly. "A painting. For the garden." It was a picture of the blue ribbon tied to the rose stem. Around it, she had painted soft rays of light, turning the small detail into something sacred. In the bottom corner, she wrote in her careful handwriting, "Truth grows here." Clara's eyes softened. "He will love it," she said. That evening, Elliot returned from the city. He had spent the day closing the last of the legal matters, meetings with the company's board, and ensuring that every unfinished business was finally settled. But as he stepped into the garden, the tension that clung to him melted away. Anna came running, her bare feet light on the path. "Close your eyes," she said, grinning. He obeyed, smiling. "All right, what are you up to?" She took his hand and guided him carefully to the greenhouse. "Do not peek," she warned. "I will not," he promised. When she finally told him to open his eyes, the sight took his breath for a moment. On the far wall of the greenhouse, the painting was framed and hanging above the piano. The light from the setting sun hit it perfectly, making the blue of the ribbon glow. Elliot stared at it for a long moment before speaking. "You made this?" Anna nodded proudly. "For you and for Mom, so we do not forget what the truth gave us." He crouched beside her, looking at the painting again. "It is beautiful," he said. "You made the ribbon look like it belongs to the sky." Anna smiled. "That is because I think Mom sent it." His throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Then she sent it to the right person." After dinner, as the night settled, Elliot walked through the garden alone. The stars were beginning to appear, scattered like silver dust across the dark sky. He could hear the soft hum of crickets and the faint laughter of Anna echoing through the house. For the first time, those sounds no longer reminded him of what he had lost, they reminded him of what he still had. He paused near the rose with the blue ribbon. The wind brushed against it gently, making it tremble as if alive. He whispered to the night, "Thank you." He was not sure who he was speaking to, his late wife, his daughter, or perhaps the truth itself. Inside, Anna was writing again in her journal. The entry for that night read, "When the truth hurts, it is only because it is healing something. Dad says pain means life is still listening." She closed the book and placed it under her pillow. Through her window, she could see the faint light from the greenhouse. It glowed softly against the darkness, like a heartbeat in glass. The next morning came with sunlight so bright it painted every room in gold. Clara was already in the kitchen, humming. Elliot sat at the table reading a letter, a notice confirming that all the estate's affairs were settled, every legal matter closed. The story that had once defined their pain was now officially behind them. Anna walked in, still wearing her pajamas, her hair slightly messy. She yawned and said, "Did something good happen?" He folded the letter with a smile. "Yes, everything is finally done." She poured herself a glass of milk and sat beside him. "Then can we go somewhere?" He looked up, curious. "Where do you want to go?" She thought for a moment. "Someplace new, someplace Mom would like." He nodded slowly. All right, he said. Tomorrow, we will go. Anna grinned and clapped her hands. Can we bring the blue ribbon? Of course, he said. It belongs wherever we go. That night, before going to bed, Elliot stood by her door. She was already asleep, her hand resting on her open journal. The page she had written earlier read, Tomorrow we begin again. He smiled softly and whispered, Yes, we do. Outside, the moonlight touched the roses, and the ribbon shimmered faintly, as if the garden itself was nodding in agreement, ready, at last, for whatever came next. The next morning began soft and golden, with sunlight spilling through the curtains like a quiet promise. The Granger estate woke slowly, the sounds of morning birds, the rustle of leaves, the faint hum of the kettle blending together like a gentle song. Today was the day they would leave the house for the first time since the trial ended. It would not be far, but it would be somewhere new, somewhere alive with color. Elliot Granger stood in the doorway of Anna's room, watching her pack a small satchel. She placed her journal inside, then carefully folded the blue ribbon and laid it on top. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as though she knew the day carried meaning. Are you ready? He asked. She looked up, smiling. Almost. Do we need to bring flowers? He tilted his head. For what? For wherever we are going, she said. It feels right to bring something that grew from home. He nodded. Then we will take two, one for us and one for Mom. They left the estate shortly after breakfast. Clara waved from the porch, a gentle smile on her face. Take your time, she called out. The world waits for no one, but it will always welcome those who walk in truth. Anna smiled back and waved. We will. The road stretched long and open, bordered by trees beginning to shift into shades of autumn. The air outside the car windows smelled of pine and morning rain. For a while, they rode in silence, the kind that felt comfortable, two hearts at peace, sharing the same air without needing to fill it with words. After nearly an hour, the landscape opened up into rolling hills that touched the edge of a wide lake. The water glimmered under the sunlight, calm and endless. Elliot parked near a grove of willow trees, and the two stepped out, the earth soft beneath their feet. Anna breathed in deeply. It smells like new, she said. Elliot smiled. It does. They walked down to the water's edge. The reflection of the sky rippled gently across the surface. Anna knelt and dipped her fingers into the water, then looked up at him. Do you think Mom would like this place? He nodded. She would have loved it. She used to paint lakes. She said water was how the sky remembered itself. Anna smiled. Then this lake remembers her too. She took out her journal and sat on a smooth rock nearby. Elliot watched as she began to write, her pencil moving slowly, her lips pressed in concentration. After a few minutes, she looked up and said, Dad, can I read it to you? He sat beside her. Of course. She read softly, her words clear and measured. Sometimes I think the truth is like water. It looks calm, but when you step inside, it feels cold first. Then it wakes you up. It makes you see everything clearer. It does not change what is real. It just helps you see what was already there. Elliot's throat tightened with quiet pride. That is beautiful, Anna. She smiled. I think Mom helped me write it. They stayed there for a while, watching the sunlight shift on the water. Then, from her bag, Anna took out one of the roses they had brought, the smaller one. She looked at it for a moment, then held it out over the lake. For Mom, she said simply, and let it fall. The rose drifted for a moment before the water carried it away, its reflection stretching across the ripples. Elliot rested his hand on her shoulder. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The silence itself was the prayer. Later, they found a small clearing beneath the willow trees. They sat there eating sandwiches Clara had packed, the sound of leaves whispering above them. Anna leaned back against the trunk, eyes half closed. I like it here, she said. It feels like the world is breathing slower. Elliot nodded. It is. Sometimes, when we stop running, we notice it has been breathing with us all along. She looked at him thoughtfully. Dad, when you said truth is a choice, does that mean we have to keep choosing it, even after everything is better? Yes, he said softly. Every day. It is not always easy, but it is what keeps us free. She smiled. Then I want to keep choosing it too. The sun began to lower behind the trees, painting the sky in soft orange and rose tones. They gathered their things and started back toward the car, the air now cool and scented with wildflowers. Before they left, Anna turned back one last time to look at the lake. The rose was gone, but in its place, the water shimmered with light. "She heard us," Anna said with quiet certainty. Elliot followed her gaze. "Yes," he whispered, "she always does." On the drive home, Anna fell asleep against his shoulder, her journal still open in her lap. The last words she had written before drifting off read, "We gave the water the truth, and it gave it back as peace." "Nye." Elliot smiled faintly as the car moved through the twilight. The road ahead curved gently, leading them home. In the rearview mirror, the fading sun caught the blue ribbon tied to the rose they had kept. It fluttered softly in the wind, a symbol not of loss anymore, but of everything that had been found: the courage to speak, the grace to forgive, and the strength to begin again. And as the stars began to bloom above them, Elliot whispered to himself, "She did not just save me, she saved the story of who we are." The car moved forward, steady and quiet, carrying a father and daughter who no longer looked backward, but onward toward a life rebuilt by truth, and held together by love that refused to fade. The morning after their visit to the lake was calm and silver with mist. The world outside the Granger estate looked softened, as if covered with a thin veil of light. Dew clung to every petal and blade of grass, glimmering under the slow rise of the Sunday. Inside the house, the quiet was peaceful rather than empty, each sound gentle, each movement deliberate, as though the house itself had learned how to breathe again. Elliot Granger stood by the kitchen window, pouring 2 cups of cocoa instead of coffee. The habit had started because of Anna, and now he preferred it to the bitterness of his old routine. Behind him, the faint patter of small feet approached, and then her voice, still rough from sleep, filled the room. "Good morning, Dad," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, sunshine," he replied. "You woke up just in time. I was about to call you." She climbed onto the chair across from him. "Did you sleep well?" He smiled. "Better than I have in a long time." Anna wrapped her hands around her mug, breathing in the warmth. "Me too," she said softly. "I dreamed about the lake again." The rose was still floating. Elliot nodded. Maybe it found a place to rest. Do you think it sank?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe it just became part of the water." She thought about that for a moment, then smiled. Then it did not disappear. It just changed. He met her eyes, his voice low and thoughtful. "Exactly, Anna. Some things do not end, they just become something else." After breakfast, the two walked through the garden. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of soil and sunlight. Anna's sketchbook hung from a strap on her shoulder. She had started drawing every morning now, saying it helped her remember what happiness looked like. She stopped by the blue-ribboned rose and crouched down to inspect it. "Look," she said excitedly. "It has 2 new buds." Elliot bent to see. "You are right," he said, smiling. "It keeps growing stronger." "Because we take care of it," Anna said proudly. "And because we told the truth." He nodded. "Yes, truth makes things grow, even when we do not notice." Anna pulled out her sketchbook and began drawing the new buds carefully, her pencil tracing each curve and shadow with slow precision. When she finished, she tore the page out and handed it to him. "For you," she said. He took it gently. "You should keep it. It is your art." She shook her head. "No, it is ours. We grew it together." He smiled softly, touched by the simplicity of her reasoning. He folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. That afternoon, the two of them visited the greenhouse. The piano stood in the corner, polished and waiting. The sunlight through the glass roof painted the floor in long golden lines. The photo of her mother still hung above the instrument, the colors warm and alive. Anna approached the piano, running her small fingers across the keys. "Can we play, Dad?" "Of course," he said, sitting beside her. They began to play the familiar melody, the one that had followed them through every dark and bright moment. Anna's notes were clearer now, more confident. She no longer hesitated between keys. Her voice joined the music, humming softly in rhythm. When the song ended, she looked at her father with shining eyes. "It sounds happy now," she said. He nodded. "It sounds like us." For a long while, they sat there in the fading sunlight, neither speaking. The air smelled of earth and hope, Later that evening, Clara joined them for dinner. She placed a dish of roasted vegetables on the table and said gently, "The house feels lighter these days." Elliot smiled. "It does. I think it finally remembers what joy feels like." Anna nodded. "Because we told the truth," she said again, almost like a prayer. Clara reached over and brushed a loose braid from Anna's face. "You remind us all what courage looks like." After dinner, Elliot stepped outside onto the porch. The sky above was a deep indigo, dotted with stars. Anna followed him, carrying her sketchbook. She sat beside him on the steps, her legs swinging above the wooden boards. "Dad," she said quietly, "what will we do tomorrow?" He looked out at the garden, the moonlight washing over the roses. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will plant something new." She leaned her head against his arm. "What kind of flower?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe lilies. Your mother loved those." Anna nodded. "Then we should plant them near the roses, so they can be friends." He smiled. "That is a good idea." She looked up at the stars, her voice small and certain. "Mom would like that too." They sat together in silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the soft rustle of the wind through the garden. When it was time for bed, Elliot tucked her in and kissed her forehead. "Good night, Anna." She smiled sleepily. "Good night, Dad. Thank you for the lake." He whispered back. "Thank you for saving me." When he turned off the light, the moonlight spilled across her blue journal lying open on the nightstand. On the newest page, she had written, "Truth is like a seed. When you take care of it, it becomes something that never stops growing." Downstairs, Elliot stood by the window, watching the garden shimmer under the moon. The blue ribbon on the rose moved gently in the night breeze, glowing like a thread of memory. And for the first time in a very long time, he realized that peace was not the absence of pain, it was the understanding that love, once found, could outlast even the darkest truth. Morning sunlight poured gently through the tall windows of the Granger estate, touching every surface with gold. The house, once heavy with silence and grief, now carried a warmth that felt alive. The air smelled faintly of roses and fresh soil. Outside, the sound of birds filled the garden, blending with the soft rhythm of the wind. Elliot Granger stood by the greenhouse door, holding a small box of lily bulbs in his hands. The day before, he and Anna had decided to plant them a new beginning for the garden and for their hearts. He watched as his daughter came running across the path, her yellow sweater fluttering behind her like sunlight in motion. "I got the watering can," she announced proudly, holding it high. He smiled. "Perfect timing, partner." Together, they knelt in the garden near the blue-ribboned rose. The soil was dark and cool beneath their hands. Elliot showed her how to dig the small holes in even rows. "Each one needs space to grow," he explained. "Crowding them makes it hard for the roots to breathe." Anna nodded, focused on her work. "Like people," she said softly. "They need space to be kind." He looked at her, surprised by the quiet truth of her words. "Yes," he said, "exactly like that." They worked in companionable silence. The garden seemed to listen, the bees hovering low, the breeze carrying the faint melody of life continuing. When they finished, Anna stood back to admire the small line of lilies resting beneath the soil. She placed the watering can carefully over them and began to pour. The water caught the sunlight, sparkling as it fell. "There," she said proudly. "Now they can start their story." Elliot smiled and brushed the dirt from his hands. "You have your mother's touch," he said. "She always said flowers grow better when someone talks to them kindly." Anna crouched down and whispered to the ground, "Welcome home." He watched her, feeling a familiar ache in his chest, one made not of pain, but of gratitude. For all they had lost, they had also found something that many never did, truth that healed instead of destroyed. Later that morning, Clara came outside with 2 glasses of lemonade. "For my favorite gardeners," she said, setting them down on the stone ledge. "You both look like you have been talking to the angels." Anna giggled. "Maybe we have." Clara smiled. "Then keep talking. The world listens when hearts are open." As the sun rose higher, Elliot took a walk through the property. Every corner of the estate held a memory now transformed, once a reminder of what was broken, now a symbol of what had been rebuilt. The bench where his late wife used to read, the piano that had waited years to be played again, even the old oak near the front gate. where Anna had once hidden from the noise of the world, now stood as a witness to her courage. He stopped by the piano later that afternoon. The light through the glass ceiling fell perfectly over the keys. Anna joined him, holding her journal. "Can we play one last time before lunch?" she asked. He nodded. "Always." They played together the melody that had followed them through every shadow and every dawn. But this time, it sounded different. It was not a song of grief or redemption anymore. It was a song of peace. Each note felt like sunlight through water, soft and whole. When they finished, Anna opened her journal and read aloud the words she had written that morning. "When truth and love walk together, the world becomes gentle again. Even broken things can shine if you do not hide them." Elliot's eyes stung with quiet emotion. "You are wise beyond your years, Anna." She smiled and looked up at the photo of her mother on the wall. "She helped me write it." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "She would be proud of you. She would be proud of us both." As the day drifted toward evening, they went outside once more to watch the sun set over the garden. The sky was painted in deep gold and soft pink, and the newly planted lilies rested under the soil, waiting for their time to bloom. Anna leaned her head against her father's arm, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think she can see us?" Elliot smiled gently. "I know she can." Anna nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Then she knows the truth saved us." "Yes," he said softly, "it did." They stood there until the last of the sunlight faded and the first stars appeared. The garden glowed faintly in the dusk, the blue ribbon on the rose shimmering like a living memory. Inside the house, the piano stood silent again, but this time, its silence was full, not empty. The melody lingered in the air, like something that never really ended. Before bed, Anna placed her journal on her nightstand and whispered a small prayer. "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me to see." Downstairs, Elliot sat by the window one last time that night. The moon hung low, lighting the garden in silver. He whispered softly to the quiet room, "She found me through our daughter." That is how love survives, by finding its way back. He closed his eyes, hearing the echo of Anna's words in his mind. Truth is brave when love stands beside it. Outside, a soft wind stirred through the garden. The lilies rustled gently, and the rose with the blue ribbon swayed in rhythm with the night. The truth had not just saved them, it had taught them how to live again. And as the stars shimmered above, the Granger estate stood no longer as a monument to pain, but as a home reborn in honesty, forgiveness, and grace. A home where love, at last, could rest.